Every year, in the vast wilderness of North America's and Canada's national parks and forests, hundreds of people vanish. Among these disappearances, some defy logical explanation. Their stories, shrouded in mystery, hint at the unfathomable. Today, let me share with you two such tales from the missing 411 files, one from Colorado and the other from Canada. These stories appear as though an unseen force plucked these individuals from reality, transporting them to places beyond their reach. In 1981, Maurice Damets, an 84-year-old minister with a PhD in theology, lived in Colorado. Despite a debilitating blood condition and arthritis in his knees that severely limited his mobility, Doc harbored a deep passion for topaz hunting. He frequented sites where, with a bit of digging, one could uncover these hidden gems. But his condition necessitated a companion to assist him in navigating these terrains and returning safely home. David McSherry, a close friend of Doc's, often accompanied him on these excursions. On April 29, 1981, the duo set off to Pike National Forest, a familiar hunting ground for them, especially an area known as Devil's Head. Despite local legends warning of malevolent spirits haunting this place, Doc and David seemed unfazed, drawn repeatedly to its allure. That morning, they arrived at their beloved spot. David helped Doc down a hill to a small clearing, leaving him with his backpack full of tools for the hunt. Then, David retreated about 50 yards away to his chosen site. For hours, they toiled separately, with David occasionally glancing over to ensure Doc's well-being. As the afternoon waned, David decided it was time to pack up. He glanced towards Doc's spot, but to his surprise, Doc was nowhere to be seen. David had checked on him just 15 minutes prior. Unperturbed at first, he assumed Doc might have moved slightly out of view or was behind a tree. But upon reaching the spot, he found it deserted, with neither Doc nor his backpack and tools in sight. David puzzled over this. Doc, with his limited mobility, couldn't have gone far. The journey back to the car involved climbing a steep embankment, a feat impossible for Doc without help. Yet, there was no sign of a struggle or an animal attack, nothing to indicate what might have happened. Thinking Doc might have somehow made it to the car, David climbed the embankment, only to find it empty. In desperation, he honked the car horn and called out, but there was no answer. His efforts drew the attention of 3 passing motorists, who offered to help search for the elderly man. Despite hours of searching, with no trace of Doc, the authorities were called in. The ensuing week saw an intensive search operation with bloodhounds and hundreds of volunteers. But, astonishingly, nothing turned up. Doc had simply vanished. In a heartfelt letter to the Colorado governor, Doc's wife expressed her conviction that something unexplainable had happened, that Doc had been taken by an unknown force. The letter received no response, and eventually, the search was called off, with the assumption that Doc had perished. In early 2018, there was this guy, Danny Phillippis. He was a 49-year-old firefighter living in Canada. Danny had a good life, a loving wife, 2 kids, a successful career. Every year, he and his fellow firefighters would take a trip to New York for a ski retreat at Whiteface Mountain. It was a highlight for Danny, a passionate skier who eagerly anticipated this annual getaway. So, come February 7, 2018, Danny and 7 of his colleagues find themselves at Whiteface having a blast. The slopes are calling, and Danny's all in, savoring every moment. Lunchtime rolls around, and his friends suggest heading to the lodge for a bite. But Danny, lost in the thrill of the slopes, decides to stay back for a few more runs, promising to join them in about 30 minutes. Time ticks by. An hour passes, and there's still no sign of Danny at the lodge. His colleagues, having finished their meal, assume he's probably skipped lunch to enjoy more skiing. They shrug it off and head back to the slopes. But as night falls and the mountain starts to close, worry creeps in. They check their phones. No messages from Danny. Where could he be? They decide to check his room at the hotel, which is conveniently attached to the mountain. They find his car parked outside, untouched. They rush to the front desk, explain the situation, and gain access to his room. Inside, everything looks normal. His belongings are all there. But Danny is nowhere to be found. After a day of skiing, he's just vanished into thin air. Danny's disappearance became a real mystery. His car was right there. His cash, passport, everything still in his hotel room. But Danny, nowhere to be seen. The search for him was massive. Whiteface Mountain was packed that day, and it had snowed heavily. The snow was deep, ruling out the possibility that he could have gone far off the mountain. Despite interviewing many people and showing Danny's picture around, no one had seen him. There was no trace of him at all. The authorities were baffled. They eventually had to call off the search, concluding that Danny must have succumbed to the elements. It was a hard pill to swallow, especially for his wife, kids, and friends. They were told that maybe, when the snow melted, they could find him. It was a devastating blow. But then a glimmer of hope pierced through their despair. A couple of days later, Danny's wife, trying to cope with her new, heartbreaking reality, got a phone call from an unknown number. She picked up, and though the voice was faint and muddled, she recognized it instantly. It was Danny. He sounded confused, disoriented. "I don't know where I am," he said. "I don't know how I got here." Alarmed and hopeful, she urged him to call the police. So Danny calls the police, but he's lost, not knowing his whereabouts. His words jumbled and unclear. Danny, utterly lost and confused, told the police he didn't understand what was happening. He described his surroundings as best as he could, and the police, piecing together his fragmented clues, located him. The shocker? He was near Sacramento, California, a staggering 2,900 miles away from Whiteface Mountain. When the police found Danny, the scene was surreal. He was still in his ski gear, jacket, pants, boots, even his goggles perched on his head. But there were oddities. He had a fresh haircut and a brand new iPhone, yet no wallet, no money, nothing else. It begged so many questions. How did he get a haircut, and why didn't the barber raise an alarm seeing a confused man in ski gear? How did he end up with a new phone? Nobody could make heads or tails of it. How does a man with no car, no cash, clad in skiing attire, travel from New York to California? How does he get a haircut, buy a phone, and then just snap back to reality, remembering to call his wife? The mystery enveloped not just Danny, but everyone around him. His family, friends, investigators. It was a puzzle that remained unsolved, a bizarre twist that seemed straight out of a strange tale.